Hey, who's someone that's inspired you, encouraged you? I ask you that question, and does anybody come to mind that has been like when you felt stuck, helps you get unstuck? Because that's what I want to talk about this morning is how do we become those kinds of people that pass on hope to other people? Some of us have those people in our lives, some of us don't, but it doesn't mean that we can't become that person for someone else. That's where I want to take it this morning. This series, Pass It On, here's what we've been trying to do. We've been saying that we all have the potential to be an influence for those around us. For some of us, it's our kids. For some of us, it's our spouse. For others of us, it can be our friends. It can be our coworkers. It can be family members. But let's not delude ourselves into thinking that we have no say, we have no ability to make a difference in the lives of other people. So the first week we looked at this and we considered, it was Rahab. Rahab, you'd think, man, Rahab. Every time she's mentioned in the Bible, it's Rahab the harlot. Rahab the prostitute. Rahab has got, not many people name their girls Rahab. Why is that? Because for some, there's a tie back to this biblical woman. And we had a suitcase, and we said, here's the deal. We've all got baggage. You've got baggage. You've got baggage that's been handed to you by your parents. And if you're not careful, some of the stuff in your baggage will get passed on to your kids. So it's not like, I don't have bad habits, I don't have bad patterns, I don't have things in my life that's like, you're like, I'm perfect. None of us are. It's with the baggage you have, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to pass it on, or are you going to try and make a break? Are you going to try and say, you know what? For me, my house, my family, my life, I want to do some things differently. Last week, for Mother's Day, we looked at Moses' mother, Jochebed, and we said, here was a woman that had everything going against her. Culture basically said, kill your baby. Life was not pleasant in Egypt. There was all this pressure to get rid of your son, and she decided, I'm going to trust God, and she puts him in the Nile, and lo and behold, just happens to work out, ends up with Pharaoh's daughter, which was a crapshoot, because I was thinking in my brain, Pharaoh's the guy who said kill them all, so how does he let his daughter have an Egyptian son to adopt? Except isn't it always different with people in power? There's just different rules for people in power. It's the way the world runs, right? And so she got to keep, and there was Moses' mom sent Miriam along, said, hey, I know a woman. She'll be happy to nurse him, raise him. Yeah. One of the lessons that we wanted to take from that is that you can pass courage along. Because I to this day am like, everybody knows Moses, everybody knows Ben-Hur, part the Red Sea, 10 Commandments. But I believe Miriam, his sister, and Aaron, his brother, learned courage that day from watching their parents decide we're not going to kill our boy. We're going to trust God. And they learned something what it's like to risk and to step out in faith and to do something really, really unorthodox. Hey, I want to ask you a question. Does this matter today? A couple of cute parents dedicating their kids. Isn't that what you're supposed to do if you're religious? This is a religious thing? I don't know. Is it much different than trusting God and putting your kid in a basket and putting them in the water when you say, you know what, maybe we're going to make choices differently because of our faith? Maybe we're going to look at life differently. Maybe we're going to encourage our kids towards a different direction because of our walk with God. So today I want to introduce you to the third person in our series, and that's Deborah. Deborah was a woman in the Old Testament. We find her story in Judges 4 and 5. She's sort of a remarkable lady in that she wore a lot of hats. If you have a Bible, if you have an app, whatever you've got, if you want to turn to me, the Old Testament book of Judges, it's the first 5 books, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, then you got Joshua, and then you've got the book of Judges. The Judges is a story of basically Joshua led the Old Testament people out. They fought some battles, but man, by and large, life was good. And then Joshua dies, and it says then the people that were leading with Joshua, they died, and the nation rose up, and all these people, they really didn't give a hoot about God. They didn't care about spiritual things, okay? And so they get in this cycle where they get messed up. They make poor choices. Because they make poor choices, they get hurt, and then God raises people up to help them get out of the hurt, all right? Deborah was one of those people that God raised up to help them get out of the hurt. And we find her story in Judges chapter 4. After Ehud died, that was the previous judge, life had gone well. It says the Israelites once again did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and so the Lord sold him into the hands of Jabin. He was a king who reigned in Hazor. That's just, biographical data. But he was a bad guy. And he took Israel and he basically taxed them. It says here, because he had, look at there, 900 iron chariots and cruelly oppressed the Israelites for 20 years, they cried to the Lord for help. I want to jump over to chapter 5. Let's look at verse 7. Verse 6, in the days of Shamgar, son of Anath, in the days of Jael, these are the bad kings. It says the roads were abandoned. Travelers took to winding paths. Village life in Israel ceased. When they chose new gods, that's Israel, they didn't want to worship Yahweh anymore, war came to the city gates. There wasn't a shield or a spear was seen among the 40,000 in Israel. Life got like you didn't want to be out there. So they got off the interstates, started taking the back roads. It wasn't easy to live life. You had somebody that was in charge that didn't like you, that was making life hard for you. You think, that's just so hard for us to get our arms around, right? Let me do another way for you. Anybody ever had a boss that didn't like them? When you have a boss that doesn't like you, what's life like at work? Why is it hard? I mean, shouldn't he be fair? Right? Isn't he supposed to be objective? Isn't she supposed to be objective? Why is it when you have a boss at work that doesn't like you, your life gets a little rougher? Because that's what people in power do to people they don't like. They make life difficult for them. And in this case, the people of Israel, they chose to not follow God, and so as a result of that, like the powers that be, just like put the thumb to them. And they oppressed them, they hurt them. It just means they made life miserable for them. And for 20 years, 2026, we moved here in the year 2000. So just slightly less than the amount of time we've been in Missouri, this people lived with somebody who didn't like them, in charge of them, making their life miserable. And they cried out to God for help. And here's what I sometimes think that happens. When your life sucks and you think, oh, I just haven't been a good person, I've made some poor choices, you think God's not going to listen to you. And God was listening. And God heard their cry. And God raised up this woman, Deborah. Kind of a remarkable woman. Look at verse 4. She was a prophetess, the wife of, and I can't even pronounce the dude's name. She was leading Israel at the time. She held court under the palm of Deborah between two cities in the hill country of Ephraim. And the Israelites came to her to have their disputes decided. She was someone who listened for God's word to give it to people. She was a judge, which literally was like a judge in a court of law. If you had a problem with somebody, you would bring the case to her. We read in verse 7 of chapter 5, remember I said village life ceased, until I, Deborah, arose, a mother in Israel. She's a wife, she's a mom, she's listening for the voice of God, she's deciding disputes. She was a pretty crazy woman with a lot of stuff on her plate. And that person did this. She lived a life that built others' confidence in Jesus. She gave them hope. Here's what I want for you this morning. I want you to be a person that passes down hope. I want you to be the kind of man or woman or student that is able to bring hope to other people, because that's what Deborah did. She reminded them that God had not forgotten them. Do we need hope? Man, this is interesting. What do I do with it? Pew Research said 68% of us feel hopeful today. That's 2/3 of us. It means 1/3 of us don't. So I don't know where you fit today. 2/3 of you are feeling somewhat optimistic, but the same survey said that 60% of us are scared about the future. So while 2/3 of us feel optimistic, maybe, there's another 6 out of 10 of us that are nervous about the direction our world is taking. 50% of those surveyed by this Pew Research group said that they were sad when they think about the future. Half of us in our spirit are like, I'm not sure. Why? Because we're overwhelmed, we're tired, we're exhausted. And here's the thing I noted. With all the technology we've got, ChatGPT, all these devices that are supposed to make life easier, we don't feel like life is easier. How come? How come there's not more of us that are optimistic and hopeful about the future? Where are you on the scale? Has there been a person in your life that inspired you to be hopeful? Or when I ask you that question, you can't think of anybody? First time it struck me, I was 16 years old. I was in a high school, in a hallway. I remember to this day, one of my teachers that I greatly respected came up to me in the hallway as the spring of I said 16, I believe I was 17, and my junior year, boom, Mr. Bearden comes up to me and says, Mike, he says, I just really see like somewhere in your future you're going to be like a Bible teacher. I was not a Bible teacher. I wasn't a Bible student. I didn't take it seriously. I wasn't a guy who I opened my Bible because if I had to for church, but that was it. And I was blown away by this guy coming up to me in the hallway and saying that. But you know what he did? He spoke words of a future to me. Have you ever had anybody speak words of a future to you? You realize you're doing that for your kids? You realize you're doing that for your grandkids? You're speaking words of a future to them? So what are the words you're saying? What are you doing for them to give them hope, to build them up? Deborah did 3 things that I think all of us can do if we would be interested in passing along hope to those that we are rubbing shoulders with. And again, I think it can be people at work. I think it can be extended family. I don't think it's just your kids. I think it's the people that you are out there with and interacting with you. Can you bring a message of hope to them? Here's the first thing that I just sort of noticed. She was a giver of hope in hard times, and she helped people hear God's voice. She listened. She listened for the voice of God herself, and she passed that along as a prophetess. As a judge, she had to listen to people who would come to them, and she just had to slow down and discern what's going on. What's happening here? What's that message? And in a world that is quick to speak, she had to sort of like pull back a little bit. I just finished reading a book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, John Mark Comer. I loved it because what he talked about, the whole basic premise of the book was we are a culture. Think about How often do you pull this out? How often are you scrolling? Do you ever look at your screen time? And it shows how much screen time you got on? You know what I did? You know what I've done? I've silenced that, because I don't want to know how much screen time I've got. Am I the only one who sits there and looks at your screen time and go, man, I wasted a lot of time, right? So what's the remedy for that? Get rid of the message, right? You know, isn't that what you do? Kill the messenger, right? That's what I did. I got rid of it, okay? John Mark Comer just talked about, man, the amount of time that we burn on things of little consequence. And we're rushed and we're hurried, and we're not a people that are prone to want to slow down. But if you are going to hear from God, you've got to slow down. You've got to pull back. You've got to create time to listen. I'm not good at it. We had a conversation last night. God is my witness. That's why it's so hard to get up here. Like, I wish I could tell you I had this nailed. I'm not good at it. My wife would tell you I'm not a good listener. I think I'm a fantastic listener. I think I'm one of the best listeners you're going to hear. Have listened to you. We don't listen well because we're in a hurry to do the next thing. Because we've got to move on with life. When was the last time you asked somebody, hey, how you doing? And they said, you know, I'm so bored, I don't even know what to do. When was the last time you heard somebody say that? What are you most likely to hear when you say, hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm so slammed. I'm so busy. Because here's the deal. Busy is a drug for you. It really is. It's like a push in your system. That adrenaline rush keeps you going, makes you feel like you're important. Slowing down feels like a waste of time. A long time ago, I read about a journal entry of a guy. It was a 7-year-old boy. You may have heard it, seen it. 7-year-old boy wrote in his journal, had the best day today. I went fishing with my dad. And somebody, like the biographer of this guy, went to say, hey, did Dad record anything about that day? And sure enough, they found Dad's journal entry about the day that he went fishing with his son. Dad's journal entry was, went fishing with my son today, wasted the whole day. We live among a people, and have for a long time, that don't know the value of pulling back, to be able to hear God's voice, slow down, discern, man. And then we wonder why we don't feel optimistic and we feel like, because I think God wants to speak words to us. So I was journaling here. How did Deborah do that? How did Deborah help them hear God's voice? She, for herself, went before God and listened. I think she would sit before God and say, speak, Lord, I'm here. It's one simple, easy way to do it. If I'm going to, and I do this, I'll open my Bible and I will say, Lord, speak. And I'll be I did this week with Judges, with Deborah. Lord, I'm reading this story about Deborah, like I can't relate, I'm not oppressed, I don't feel that way. I've got like cars, she's got walking. I mean, like, what do I need to see here, Lord? And I'll read. And I'm 15, 20 minutes a day. Pull back that you might hear from God. Begs the question, you have to believe God's real. And that God rewards those who seek him. So it could be nonsense to you. I get it. A lot of people understand that meditation is a big deal these days. Why is meditation a big deal? What is meditation? Same principle. It's slowing down. It's pulling back. It's thinking. It's reflecting. I turned 65 this week. And got my journal out. One of the things I went and did was I went back to my birthday in Pontiac, Michigan in 1961, and I just spent a half hour reading about what life was like. Why? Because I wanted to know what life was like for my parents who were bringing a firstborn son into the world. What was their world like? Because I wanted to enter into some of that. Because as I think about the next chapter of my life, I want to know where I've come from, so that I might think about where I'm going. Because one of the thoughts that struck me as I was sitting there reflecting on what my parents' world was like, having a son, and now I'm at this end watching my kids have their children. They're at the same spot that my parents were, that I'm now at the end of this. And I'm like, okay, what do I need to learn from this? What can I be gaining from this? How can I be a help to them? You can't do that if you're just rushing from one thing to the next. You've got to slow down and evaluate your life and see where you're at and where do you want to go and how are you going to get there. Deborah did that. She sat to hear from God and pass that word on, and I believe there were times that she encouraged others to listen for God's voice. You know what I'm really pumped about today? Wave back there in the back, Mr. Tyler. Yeah, see Mr. Tyler back there?
Hi, Tyler.
Tyler, in fact, there he is, Tyler. Tyler started a Bible study for guys on Wednesday night. Tyler, have you ever led a Bible study before in your life? Nope. When was the first one?
My first Bible study?
No, first one you led.
Oh,
Wednesday. He's helping others hear God's voice. You know why he's helping others hear God's voice? Because I believe that as he sat here, there's been others that helped him hear God's voice. Be a person that helps others hear God's voice. Slow down. Hear God's voice for yourself. You can pass it along. The second thing was when people were afraid, Deborah encouraged them to act. So here's the gist of the story. The people have been beat up on for 20 years. God's going to give them the victory. Look at verse 6. So she sent for Barak, and he's the son of a couple people. And she's got a message. She says, the Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, go take with you 10,000 men of Naphtali and Zebulun, and lead the way to Mount Tabor. And I'm going to lure Sisera, that's the enemy king. He's the commander, with his chariots, his troops to the river. And I'm going to give him into your hands. And Barak said, if you go with me, I'm going to go. But if you don't go with me, I'm not going to go. Very well, Deborah said, I'm going to go with you, but because the way you're going about this honor of victory will not be yours, for the Lord will hand Sisera over to a woman. And so Deborah went with Barak to Kadesh, where he summoned those two other tribes. 10,000 men followed him, and Deborah also went with him, and they went out to battle. God said, hey, king, I want you to go. I'm going to give you the victory. The king said, I'm not so sure. I'm a little squeamish. I'm not sure. I'll go if you go with me, because you're like the one who speaks on behalf of God. All right, I'll go, but you're not going to get credit for the victory then. Crazy thing, because you know who ends up in the God's Hall of Fame of Faith? It's this king, this general, who was sort of skirmish about going to battle. The thing I took from the story, though, as I was reading it is, Deborah comes to him and says, hey, you need to go. He says, I'm a little nervous. Will you go with me? And she says, you fool? You idiot? What is wrong with you, you coward? Didn't God tell you to go? And now you're balking? I think many of us think God thinks of us that way. God gives you a word and you balk on it, and you think God's right there with a wet noodle ready to hit you. I mean, she could have fired him. She could have publicly shamed him. Hey, I want all of you to listen. I just gave, we'll pick on Ian. I just gave Ian a word from God that he needs to go do this, and he's too chicken to do it. What do y'all think? Can we just cheer him up a little bit? She could have done that, but she didn't. You know what she did? She quietly just said to him, all right, if you need me to go, I'll go with you. She encouraged him to act, and she was willing to get in it herself. You want to give people hope? The words that come out of your mouth, do they build them up? You say, I'm with you in this. We can do this. You got this. What do you need from me? How can I help you? I want to be a part of this. You can take this next step. Are those the words that come out of your mouth? Or do you stand off? You're like, oh man, you idiot. You should know better. Because listen, I already know that language. I speak it to myself. I already know I blew it. What I need is someone to come alongside and say, come on, let's pick up the pieces and let's keep going. Your kids know they blow it. They don't need you to reinforce that. What they need is someone to come alongside and say, okay, man, let's go. What can we learn from this? I was thinking that my son, a long time ago, in a semifinal soccer game, as I recall, knocked a kid down in the penalty box. And if you know soccer, you know that's a free kick for the opposition, and that kick ended up costing his team the game. They lost in the semifinals, 3-2. My son was that it happened because he took the kid out. There's no other way. It's all there for the world to see. So now we get home, and what do? Because he wants to quit. We're on the back porch. He wants to quit because it was his fault his team lost. What do you say? You know what I said? You're right. You did. Can't deny what happened. It happened. You took the kid out. And your team lost. What can you learn from it? You don't need to quit. You don't need to bail on this. You need to learn from this. Isn't that a person in here who hasn't someone tell them you're fired? You're not good enough? You've been rejected? We all get that message from somebody. What people of hope do is they come alongside and say, you don't have to stay there. You don't have to live there. That's what Deborah did. She said, all right, I'll go with you. And they went in the battle and they won. And God gave the victory to another woman who killed the king as he was running. Great story. It's just really, really cool stuff. But Barak is seen as a hero. He's the champion of God's army. And Deborah's right there beside him, which leads me to the third thing that just struck me. When God gave them the victory, it was really, really cool that I saw in chapter 5. On that day, Deborah and Barak sang a song. They were worship leaders. When the princes in Israel take the lead, when the people willingly offer themselves, I sing praise the Lord. And then she names all these people that went out. Hear this, you kings. Listen, you rulers. I'm going to sing to the Lord. I'm going to make music to the Lord, the God of Israel. And she names the tribes that went out. And she spotlights these leaders who were willing to lead their people out. And she pointed to all these other people and said, man, thank you for showing up. And she expressed gratitude for that. And she expressed gratitude for what God was doing. And you know the thing that struck me? I mean, how many of you got these gadgets? It's called a phone, I guess, right? It's got this really cool thing here. It's got a light. You guys, do you ever use the light? Yeah. I always forget I have the light. I'm like, if only I had a light. You know the thing about the light? It's really, really cool to shine a spotlight on things, help you see them, right? You know what she doesn't do? She doesn't point the spotlight at herself. She points it at the people. Did you see this today? Did you see this today? This was a gentleman that first time was on the drums with us today. Got hold of Ryan this week and said, I don't even know how the story went. I mean, I really don't. Like, you said something to somebody, and next thing I know, Ryan's like, yeah, I'm going to, because Dan was interested in playing drums. And I'm like, does Dan play drums? Apparently Dan plays drums. Dan plays drums enough to know that he said, should I bring my in-ears as opposed to, right? As opposed to, I call them headphones, but you musicians call them in-ears, right? There's somebody who stepped up today. See the bass guy back here? Comes every once in a while. He's playing today, Seth. You know what she did? She shone the spotlight and expressed gratitude to other people for their part in what they did. And that, thanks for doing the kitchen day. We had muffins, and I mean, yes, Sean was supposed to bring stuff and he forgot. Okay, so we acknowledge that, but you took what was there and you made it available. Thank you. And those of you that are working back there with the kids, loving on our kids. There's one person back there one-on-one in the nursery today. What a waste. What a waste. I got one adult working with one baby. The baby's not even going to know. What a waste. Right? Is that how you see it? I got one adult willing to sit for 1 hour and play with a baby back there so that the parents can be in worship. It's just about giving people credit. You want to be a person of hope? Be someone that encourages other people to get in the game and applauds them and cheers them on as they do it. Because the world's got enough critics. We've got enough people to beat us up. Let's find people, let's be a church that just pushes people to like, yeah, you and God got this. That's what Deborah did. You want to give hope? You want to give hope? Be someone who shines the spotlight on other people. I love a quote by General McRaven. He's written a couple of books, and the team's coming up. He writes, the thing that helped him be a better Navy SEAL operator was hope. He said, hope is the most powerful force in the universe. With hope, you can inspire nations to greatness. With hope, you can raise up people who are beaten down. With hope, you can ease the pain of loss. Sometimes all it takes is one person with hope to make a difference. Because we're all going to find ourselves neck deep in mud someday. And that is the time we need someone to lift us up and give us hope that tomorrow will be a better day. Here's what I would like you to take away from this. She was a wife, a mom. She listened for God. She listened to people. She encouraged them, believed in them, they could do better. And she applauded them, cheered them. Can you do that? There's nothing magical about any of the things I just mentioned. There's nothing. Except my own soul, my own heart before God. Am I willing? I believe you can. I believe you can be that person that gives hope to other people. I want you to do that. I want you to pass on hope. Let's stand and sing with these guys.